if anybody wants to review it afterwards and the information, then they can. And for those who couldn't make it today, then they can review it as well. We have a YouTube channel, Liam. So I will probably, yeah, you're okay with posting it, great. And once we get introductions done, then I'll just have I'll put you on speaker, not gallery there. And so anyway, so Anne Marie, okay, which Anne Marie wants to go first? Introducing yourself.
Oh, I'll go next since I'm showing up next to you on my screen.
Oh, it's Kim. Kim, do you want to do an introduction?
Sure. My name is Sister Kimberly King. I'm a religious of the Sacred Heart here in Halifax, and I'm the director of Barra Spirituality Center, which is the first floor of our house.
I've heard great things about it.
Thank you.
And Anne Marie.
Anne Marie Dalton, and I'm a member of DAN. I've been working with Marion on EV stations. Also a member of the, what are we calling ourselves? The Coalition for Climate Change, the Spiritual Coalition, which Hannah and Chris are also part of, and Jim as well, and many others. So anyway, that's enough for now, I guess.
Okay, that means you're next, Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah Minsloff. I work at the Ecology Action Center on the energy team.
Okay. And Jim?
Hi, folks. I'm a meteorologist and I'm a member of the coalition. And as well, I have recently had some meetings with the Archbishop's office on certain initiatives like greening sacred spaces, but also they're interested in learning more about EV charging stations in church parking lots, which is a good thing.
And Rockingham United. I'm sure you have another name.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Thorne. I'm the office administrator here at Rockingham. Our minister, Reverend Angela's in another meeting right now, so I'm filling in for her.
And Chris.
Hi all, I'm Chris Benjamin. I'm Senior Energy Coordinator with Ecology Action Center, also involved with the Spiritual Coalition on Climate Action, and I'm working closely with Hannah on a number of energy efficiency issues, and really excited to hear what Liam has to say today.
Yeah. And Liam, before I give you the floor, maybe I'll give everybody, because not everybody knows this, a brief history of how we got to today. So 2 years ago, the Diocesan Environment Network for the Anglican Diocese of Nova Scotia and PEI celebrated a 10th anniversary. And during that time, at that Zoom meeting, because things by Zoom, at that Zoom meeting, we were doing some visioning, where are we going to go? What do we want to do? Now, most of DAN's work, and we do not limit it to Anglicans at all, and we don't even limit it to Nova Scotia and PEI. We have people mostly from Nova Scotia and PEI, but we have people from as far away as Uganda and South Africa. So everybody's included. We all have the same goal, and that is to care for creation. And so anyway, at our 10th anniversary, it was actually the bishop who mentioned this, the possibility of putting in electric vehicle charging stations in church parking lots, given the fact that, as we know, a fair amount of the time during a week, church parking lots can be empty and not used. And even at that, there's generally a space or two. We wish that we were overflowing, but the reality is that there's often a space or two or more in a church parking lot, even on Sunday morning. And so we took that idea because, like I say, Dan doesn't come up with ideas. We try to support those ideas when we're presented with them, and support the people who have them and their passions and their calls to whatever type of stewardship it might be. So Anyway, we've been investigating this since. One of the people who came up with the idea was Blaine Finney, who is a postulant for ordination in the Anglican Church. And so we started looking at it. We started investigating it. We started thinking about the possibilities. We talked to the city first. We talked to the HRM. Am I getting this in the right order, Anne Marie? I think we did. And they were really thrilled about the possibility of using church parking lots because we have a lot of really good locations. And I'm not just limiting this to the Anglican Church at all, but we do. The province is riddled with churches with parking lots. And if we can make good use out of those parking lots, all the better. So the people from the HRM were thrilled because they said that the municipality actually is short on space. So where they were going to put them was a bit of a quandary. But the wheels of government move slow. And so we haven't had a lot of response at this stage of the game. We also have in the last several months been in touch with both the Minister of the Environment during the Nova Scotia Environmental Network annual meeting with him, and with the MP, Andy Fillmore. And everyone at all levels of government thinks it's a great idea. So we've continued with that. We had a presentation on a Zoom meeting by a young man, I can't remember his name right offhand, from the Clean Foundation. And we talked about that too. What are the options there? What are the possibilities? And so anyway, to add another dimension to this, Anne Marie and I actually ran across a man in England who is with the Church of England, and he has successfully had a project where they renovated their church hall and at the same time installed EV charging stations in the church parking lot. And so he's been enthusiastic about supporting us and providing as much information as he can from his experience. Well, it was about 6 weeks ago that I was at an international ecumenical conference in Assisi, Italy. The Roman Catholics in the crowd will be happy to know that one of the sponsors was Laudato Si. And yes, and so my first night at the meeting, the first meal, I sat across from a woman from the Church of England and beside a woman from the Episcopal Church of the United States. It wasn't just Anglicans, there were Roman Catholics, Lutherans, people from the World Council of Churches, and Anglicans. And anyway, I sat across from these two people and beside them over supper, and we started talking about our respective positions, which are quite similar, except mine's at the diocesan level, theirs is at the national church level. And I mentioned the EV charging stations, and they said, we're doing the same thing. And I went, I thought we were unique. And they said, so did we. And so the Church of England has, and I'm supposed to have a meeting this week with somebody from the Episcopal Church of the United States who oversees all of their environmental activities. But I have had more contact with the Church of England, and they're doing quite well in this. They've really moved ahead. And Liam, you might be interested to know that what they've done is they've negotiated with 11 different installation companies because they've expressed interest in moving ahead with this project and supplying churches with the installation, and I think some maintenance too, if I dare throw that in. And so they've identified 11 companies. They have developed criteria for which church parking lots are the best locations. And they had a wonderful webinar. And I can share that with you, Liam, if you are interested. And so they're farther ahead than us, and they're doing it on a national level. But if we do this even on a provincial level, then we have, if we do it ecumenically or multi-faith, then we have a significant number of parking lots to deal with, and we know how many EV charging stations the federal government aspires to by 2035. So that's where we are today. Basically, I ran into Jim for another reason, and we had a conversation, and he was keen on it, and the United Church has been very keen on it, and so we're kind of gathering numbers as we go. But nobody says that it isn't a good idea. So with that, can I hand that over to you?
Thanks, Marion. Yeah, so there's no bells and whistles on today's discussion. It was really just to get a sense of where the group is. So thank you for that overview, and where we might be able to help, either on, I guess, a little bit of what we do, helping coordinate the contractors, helping finding funding to make these projects possible, and if needed, providing that energy champion that can stick handle those projects along as they go. And that's the role that Navigate Energy would have played when we've helped with electric vehicle chargers in. So before I get into that, my name's Liam Cook. I'm with Navigate Energy, and we work specifically with the nonprofit small business community that realize that clean energy projects are challenging enough when you're trying to do it alone for one upgrade. They get significantly more challenging as you do a couple upgrades at once. And we know that there's a lot of complexity and a lot of funding programs out there at the moment, and a lot of contractors that do great work and others that fly by night, unfortunately, sometimes. And so we're typically there to stick handle project management, clean energy projects across the finish line for those that need that support. And so Hannah, I think I'd shared some of the grant and funding opportunities that exist in the marketplace today. She connected me with you and the group, and so happy to help as best we can. And so where our experience with electric vehicle charging has taken place has been the multifamily sector, so apartment and condo buildings. Likely would have been working with the folks at Clean Nova Scotia through their EV Boost program last year, as well as stacking that funding from Efficiency Nova Scotia that was eligible for those groups. So it'll be our first time doing the charitable sector specifically for EVs, but we've worked with charities and nonprofits on many other energy upgrades. So insulation, lighting, heat pumps, solar panels on the roofs. And so, yeah, bringing that expertise as to what grants, incentives are available there, and some of the contractor networks that we've used to make those projects successful in the past, specifically in Nova Scotia, but I know of at least 2 individuals that are doing installs in PEI as well. And so that regional reach is what really appeals to me. I also like the projects that aggregate a number of charitable organizations or nonprofits so that you don't have to do it alone. And so I just wanted to get a sense of, I guess, where the education component lied. Quick, like, hand up if you have a clear understanding of the difference between level 1, level 2, level 3 electric vehicle charging. Some, so middle of the road, perfect. Thanks, Jim. So for those that aren't as aware, the level 1 electric vehicle charging would be as if you were to plug an electric vehicle just into an everyday wall outlet or wall socket. Gives you a relatively slow charge, maybe 6-8 kilometers per hour of range that you would have when you're plugged in. Those level 2s, as you can kind of guess, is a step above that, where you're getting about 60-70 kilometers of range per hour that you're charged in. And then level 3s would typically be charging a vehicle from 20% up to 80% of battery capacity, typically in about 45-60 minutes. And so just having that idea that typically when we're talking about electric vehicle charging, we're typically, for nonprofits and in that space, we typically be looking at level 2 and level 3 chargers. Otherwise, people typically carry around their own level 1 charger where they can plug into an exterior outlet there. And so, not knowing where this project was before coming to the table, it's good to have a sense of it's still in its very early stages. There's some funding opportunities that can help from that exploratory stage all the way through to, okay, we're ready to go ahead and purchase some of these chargers. And so I would have shared, Marion, I believe, Canada's Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program, the ZVIP program. That's where Clean Nova Scotia got its funding last year. Still waiting to hear back as to whether or not the Clean EV Boost program will relaunch in Nova Scotia this year, but we do expect that federal program to be launching this spring, which covers 50% of eligible project costs, both for level 2 and level 3 chargers. And so this might be a good, opportunity to open up the floor for some quick questions or more of a discussion as to how this group could work.
I can just jump in. We had a great talk with Colin from Next Ride at Clean at a meeting a couple of months ago. And he was also talking about the differences between level 1, 2, and 3. Saying if you want to keep it super simple and low cost and just provide something where people could plug in overnight, a level 1 was fine. But he thought ideally, in terms of cost and benefit time, that a level 2 would be a good fit for the faith groups. So that seems to fall nicely into what you're saying as well, with potentially an occasional level 3, because those are much more expensive and would require possible further infrastructure upgrades, and maybe a level 2 would as well in terms of like electrical panel upgrades to handle the load. So if you could just talk about what might be necessary just as a refresher for that in terms of level 2 and 3. And then he also talked about, because in the UK, the model is they use it as a very small revenue generator. And what they're seeing is that their revenue generating management companies charge around 5 to 10%. But Colin was saying that here in Canada, they're charging more around the 40 to 50%. And so he's seeing that depending on what the costs are to run everything and to purchase and install the equipment, that might be less of an enticement here or of a value add for the faith organizations. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on both those things. So what additional costs might be involved for installing level 2 and a level 3, and then any information you might be able to share about the for-profit version of it, as opposed to just having a free service for the community.
Yeah, great, Hannah. No, that's great guidance and direction. So 100%, as you said, there's not a huge amount of value of, I guess, working to add extra infrastructure for level 1. See, like I said, a lot of electric vehicle owners that are going longer distances will likely have that level 1 charger with them. And if you've got an exterior outlet, great. You won't be billing anyone for level 1 charging. For level 2 and level 3 charging, you have the option of either offering that charging for free or having basically a networked charger that is going to allow payment for any of those users to recoup some of that infrastructure investment that you'd be making. And the level 2, level 3 chargers are the ones that are eligible for those grant and rebate incentives, where level 1 chargers are not. So when it comes to basically making a revenue or having the ability to recoup some of those costs, it's really 2 costs that owners are looking to recoup. So the first cost would be the cost of the infrastructure. So level 2 charger, our numbers last year, they were looking at about $7,500 to $8,000 per charger, installing new electrical labor and the chargers themselves. Those would not, in all the cases that we dealt with, they did not require a panel upgrade. And so that ballpark of $7,500 to $8,000 is what I would expect to see for a charger that's mounted to a wall on the exterior of the building. And so you're looking at recouping that investment as well as recouping the cost of electricity to you if you're billing those users. That would be for an ownership model where the churches decide to own that infrastructure outright. To get to the other piece, which is more of that lease model, An organization like Flow would typically install their chargers, carry the cost of that, and then take a much greater chunk of that revenue to recoup those investments. If you do, just before going back to that leasing model, on the ownership model, the organization that we did that handled all of that payment processing, they just charge a flat $17 per month fee, so about $199 per charger per year. And so that fee would be recouped as well. The way that that system works is it's either a key fob or an online app or an app on your phone, where the user would pay for the amount of time or the amount of electricity that they use at that space. Jumping back to that leased model, I don't know how much that revenue share those organizations like Flow are providing. I would expect it would be less than 50% in all fairness, until they've recouped their investment. But there's definitely different payment models that are out there, Hannah. We've had really good experience locally in Halifax. There's a group called Electric Avenue, and they provide both a product as well as a software solution. And so that would be the Wadi Pro and then the Electric Avenue billing platform. Yeah, Anne-Marie? Oh, you're just on mute, sorry.
I just noted your cost. So to install a level 2 charger, you said was like 7,500 or so. Is that what?
Yeah,
I just wonder what the cost is.
8,000.
Okay. Because we just had one installed in our condo building, for example, in our parking space, which is more like 3,500. I just wonder what the difference, why that big difference would be. Is that because it's a personal one, or?
It would be it's called a networked charger. And so it's that ability to take payment. I'm assuming the one that's in the condo parking garage is just a plug and play, right? Which is, so definitely more affordable and an option that exists. You would still be eligible for the ZVIP grants that as they are today of having a non-networked solution, but it wouldn't allow any of these groups to recoup some of that cost and expense. Another Anne-Marie, yeah.
This is Kim, but Anne-Marie is with me. I just have a practical question based on what I was hearing. When you mentioned the level 2 charger on the exterior of the building, if our parking lot and the parking space that we are thinking of is not attached to our building, it is in fact across a driveway and into another space, is that feasible?
It's feasible. It gets much more expensive. So anytime we've proposed those solutions, the pricing's been too high for others to want to move forward with it. Typically, we're at the 25,000 mark for that one charger. And so it's a couple pieces. One is you're running the electrical conduit underneath the parking lot. So you're either tearing up the asphalt or you're being able to drill below it. The second piece is the post mounts. And so when we look at the posts, they've been in the ballpark of another 5,000 just for the post itself. I'm sure there's more affordable ways to do it, but it's typically increased the cost significantly.
Anne-Marie
takes care of that.
Anne-Marie, isn't your center close to the Anglican Cathedral?
Yes, it is.
Down the street from it, yes.
So is your parking lot attached at all or backs up to the cathedral? No. Oh, I was thinking that it could be a partnership if the land was adjacent. That's all I was thinking.
No.
Okay.
No, we're on the corner of Summer and Carleton.
College.
College, I'm sorry. Summer and College.
Okay. Yeah, so it is up farther. But the lease, Liam, I hadn't really thought about the lease before. And the thing is, I know that any of the Anglican churches so far have really been focused on this is part of our contribution to the community, and I expect the others are the same. You know, we're not expecting to get rich off of this. What we're looking at is making a contribution, A, to the environment, and B, to the broader community, so that there are opportunities for people with EV cars to be able to charge. And so, yeah, so it's part of our mission and outreach more than anything. And so as long as we can recoup, this is the big thing, because as you know, churches generally don't have a lot of money and things are tight. So our biggest need is to be able to at least break even.
And we see that. So obviously when it comes to EV charging, we see that with the condo corporation model as well, of that residents that don't own electric vehicles don't want to be subsidizing the cost for the residents that do and get that benefit from it. But more so we see it in the nonprofit charitable sector all the time, where it's oil bills, electricity for heating, absolutely, yeah, wreck your budget. And so we've found probably better for the building itself is definitely those investments in insulation, heating systems, solar PV on the roof. If it was coming down to just what's going to give you the best financial return, I would go towards energy conservation, energy efficiency, and renewables before EV charging. But when it comes to let's provide an amenity within our community and get more people towards our community centers and our faith-based centers, EV chargers check that box and they provide a little bit of revenue, but it's not going to be enough to keep the doors open for anyone.
No. And like I say, we're not looking to get rich, but a Colin, and yes, thank you, Hannah, for reminding me of his name. But as Colin was saying, if you have that there, then people are recognizing that you're really putting some, excuse the pun, energy into caring for the planet. And so, and it's not just for marketing purposes, but you know, it's sometimes the general public doesn't understand that faith communities really are committed to caring for this planet. And so it helps with that sort of education. It's like solar panels on a roof. People see that and they say, hey, you know, the church is involved and wants to tread lightly on the planet. So yeah.
I would agree 100%, and we've heard that time and time again. That yeah, insulation that's buried in the walls, heating systems buried in the basement. No one sees it. Yes, right. It's like you're still doing your part, but nobody sees it. And electric vehicle charging, solar PV, anything that would be on the exterior of the building definitely showcases that, Marion. So it's helpful for us just knowing a little bit of starting to get into like what are the priorities for our groups, right?
Liam, what would the cost difference be then? As Anne Marie said, I feel like Colin might have said around 3,000-ish, but like if we're not going for a networked system,
Yeah, so for the
there's not a need or an interest in the revenue generation.
Yeah, so non-networked chargers, they range anywhere from the low end, about $350 up to $900, $1,000. And then on top of that, you would pay for your electrician. And so electrician should run is really going to be dependent on where your electrical panel is compared to where you're putting the charger, but would typically run anywhere from about $600 up to a few thousand.
Anybody else have a question for Liam?
Yeah, it's Jim.
Another one, Liam. Based on your experience with the MURBs and the condos, so the multi-unit residences, and working in the nonprofit sector with other elements of energy efficiency, do you think there would be any likelihood of this group of multi-faith organizations getting either a nonprofit rate or a large group rate if they're all going to the same provider, and possibly also, to local electricians or, several that can do the work across the province.
Yeah, so purchasing discount, I think is what you're talking about, Hannah? Say, yeah. Across multiple sites shouldn't be a problem. It would be just making sure that I know for us, it's like we might be able to get that pricing discount within HRM if we're using one electrician across all those buildings. Possibly a pricing discount for a bulk purchase if we were buying one type or one make and model number on those chargers, depending on what the quantity is, would likely be available.
That's motivating.
To look into. Yeah, and we can take that and run with it through a few distributors. We just have to have a rough idea of how many chargers we were counting, so we can get an idea.
And that would be our job.
Jim,
Yeah.
just having even if you had, hey, we've got 12 sites that are interested in this. Each one of them wants at least one charger. Some may want two. Just having that kind of ballpark idea. That'd be great, Marion. And Jim, you had a question. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was, thanks, Liam. I was wondering about the third party, like the lease option, where you might get a parish or a archdiocese that doesn't want to deal with anything but have it set up, and it's an opportunity to demonstrate leadership, an opportunity to provide a service to the community, but don't really care about revenue. What would be the options for having a third party run it? You'd mentioned kind of a lease thing and they get the revenue, but I forget what the commitment might be for a parish to have a third party do it, take all the revenue, set it up, blah, blah, blah.
So Jim, we haven't gone down that path yet with an organization, but the two that I would reach out to are Flow and ChargePoint, just to start that conversation as to what exactly it would look like from their expectation piece. I would imagine where they're taking the risk on it, I guess, on how many active users they're going to see. They'll want to do more due diligence at each level and just make sure that there would be a profitable location. I think many of the locations would be for them and there'd be interest. Again, it would be good to know, are we doing these as one-off requests, or do we have multiple sites that we're able to go and make that ask with them? But yeah, there'd be two off the top of my head that would be big enough that I wouldn't anticipate that they just go under in 3 or 4 years time and leave you stranded with that infrastructure.
That's a good point.
And they would take care of the maintenance for it.
Exactly.
There's also, and locally, we're typically seeing a 5-year parts and labor warranty on the level 2s that are being owned outright.
I see. And what about, and then there's the vandalism and those other risks. I don't know how high those risks are, but of course they're not zero. And the other question related to the distance from the building, my understanding is you can get a cord or whatever you call it that goes 20 or 25 feet or something like that, or 7 meters. Is that fair?
So 7 meters would be basically that longest cord that you would have essentially from your charger box, the wall mounted piece of equipment. The maximum length I've seen is 7 meters on that. Typically 5 meters comes standard, so still a pretty good range that you have. But it does allow that if you can't put the box directly at that parking space, you do have some wiggle room for it. The second piece on vandalism is typically you're looking at a few ways to deter vandalism. And so where they're going to be spaces that aren't necessarily monitored 24/7, as unfortunate as it is, Clean Nova Scotia, their Portland Street location just had, yeah, that copper cable completely stolen from them. We're looking at the same. There's some ways to get around that between lock boxes and things. Yeah, it's definitely worth noting. In all cases that we've had experience with, we've made sure that those building owners have notified their insurance companies that these are being added to their building. And so, yeah, depending on who your insurance provider is and what's covered, that may be a reimbursable expense.
Thanks.
Yeah, Kim?
I was recently reading that in some parking lots, I think this was in the US, but they were putting that some of them came with lights that were also supplied by whatever the electricity is, were attached somehow and were used in darker spaces in parking lots.
Yeah. So there's two types there, Anne-Marie. There's the so integrated with a lamp pole. And
Yeah.
so that would be, yeah, an easy one. And then there's more of like the canopy style. Now with canopies, you'd typically be doing 8-10 parking spaces, all outfitted with concrete pillars. And so it would be, yeah, starting to get into those much higher expenses, but again, something that we can definitely run with, take a look at. I haven't seen them installed in Nova Scotia, but that doesn't mean they can't be. Yeah.
If you were, this is just hypothetical, but if you were preparing for an establishment that is a church, but might also be becoming a sort of like a home for retired seniors or priests, they're going to have a need for some kind of chargers, I would assume. I was wondering about, has anybody brought that up? Like, I was thinking if you had 3 priests who had to have chargers anyway, then if you added a couple more, and those ones could be for the church, I don't know. Can you speak to that a little? I don't know. I assume
Yeah,
they'd just be overnight ones. I don't know. Yeah.
So there's 2 pieces there, Joanne, that I'd probably make note of. The first is just whether or not you would want each individual to have that, I guess, charging infrastructure and electricity included. So you could have that non-networked solution and have them all on their own, all on one main host meter account, and simply charge a monthly rate for that. Ideally, they'd be networked and each user would be billed for exactly what they use. The second point is if you were installing the first 2 or 3 chargers, and then maybe at a later date, we're going to install the others, we could just let the electricians know that we plan to what's called daisy chain those EV chargers so that they do come off of that one feed. But it's wired with the amperage and conduit size to make sure that it would be able to house and accommodate those future chargers going in.
Right. Okay.
Kim,
Thank you.
have a question?
Yeah. Again, this is a basic question, but I'm just more and more curious the longer this conversation goes on, which is very interesting. If the charging station is attached to the side of your house and somebody comes up and uses it, we have hybrid cars, so I don't know about electric cars. How does someone, where does the cost come from? That when someone comes up to it, are you paying with a credit card like you pay at a gas pump? Or is the building and whatever institution is within the building, are they assuming the cost of that and somehow recoup it? But where does the cost of the electricity come from?
Yeah, so Kim, the cost of the electricity typically gets billed back to the main electrical panel and meter, so that whatever Nova Scotia Power account is fixed to that building.
Yeah.
The ways around that are a couple. So if you had a non-networked solution that you were using for your own residence, You can simply put a lockbox over it so that whoever the driver of the vehicle is has a physical key to that lockbox. Otherwise, you're absolutely right. If you were gone away for 2 weeks on vacation and neighbor had friends over, they needed to charge up their car, they could totally plug in and it would just be billed back to your home. When we're talking more so at a larger level for either the networked or non-networked chargers, you could either have the non-networked that would be open to the public that the church is paying for, not recouping their expenses with, or that networked solution. The way that works is it's either an app on your phone or it's a key fob where you would tap the charger and it would bill you for either how long you're charging for or how much electricity you consume.
Okay. So if you don't have a networked one, you're saying we value this so much that we're gonna pay for you to come charge your car.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
That's helpful.
I have a bit of a left field question, but
I can answer it.
about we were talking about the visibility of it, and I very much agree that that's a benefit, and that it it promotes you as caring about the environment, but it also, the more that people see, the more normalized it becomes, the more it spreads. And it's the same, I know in our work with churches, there's often a desire for solar panels for that reason. It's a visible symbol of doing something. But what I wonder is, because I know, like I often see charging stations at hockey rinks, taking my kids to hockey around the Maritimes, and they surprise me because I just kind of stumble on them. I don't really notice them. They're not that visible. I mean, they're visible, but they're not like icons or beacons or whatever. You just kind of walk by them and then, oh, cool. So the question is, I wonder, in your experience working with small business and nonprofits, what kind of promotion do they do of the fact that they, if any, of the fact that they have charging stations? And is that something you've ever been involved with, is just kind of promoting the success or sharing the success story?
So we haven't shared electric vehicle chargers yet. So the organizations that did install them, again, were in that multifamily sector where they were keeping it just for their residents. That said, they are using a networked service so that they can bill those residents back. And part of that application is whether or not you want those chargers to be publicly viewable on a number of charging maps. So there's a few different platforms that are out there right now that show you public charging. And so the easiest way would just be make these chargers public and just demonstrate them there. Now, the work that we've done on the energy efficiency and solar panel side of things for community buildings typically has been putting together poster boards that sit within the building itself to promote some of those upgrades and explain what the benefit is back to the community. So that helps when it's systems like the heat pumps or insulation that are buried that the public really doesn't see. And so I don't think that like hits the ball out of the park on what could be done for these groups, but depending on the size, scale, opportunity, anything from case studies, presentations to definitely having them all listed as publicly available charge points on those websites would be the first initial things that would come to mind, Chris. Yeah.
Thanks. And I do think it's something sort of this group should probably keep in mind going forward, is because to me, this is if a bunch of different churches from different denominations are kind of developing this resource together, that's a great, really positive story, and probably would be of interest to someone to share that, maybe the media. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, we've had great success. Sorry, Anne-Marie, just the Climate Story Network shares all great news articles that are happening around Nova Scotia. And so we've had the opportunity to feature a couple clients in that. Yeah.
A lot of churches also have these digital boards, at least around the city, to say, check out our
Love it.
Charger, how do you do charger? Anyway, yeah, there are some ways to publicize. Anyway,
Half
I'm
price
sorry, I
charging
have
for
to
the first
leave
3
the
months.
group. I have to leave the group for an appointment at 4. Thanks very much, Liam, and
Thanks for
I'll check
attending,
out the
Marie.
rest of it on the recording.
Perfect.
I like that idea. Get charged, come to mass.
Yes. That's great. That's
do
great,
it.
Jim. There you go. 2
what a
charges
good-
for 1 or something.
And the fact that we're going into Pentecost Sunday, that's a really good line. But anyway, there was an also Chris also came in with a good segue to my question is, so here we have, at least right now, United Church, Roman Catholic, Anglican, Anglican involved or interested. And that's a fairly significant number of locations just to begin with, if you just look at Nova Scotia alone. And anyway, now I think that after, and Liam, you've done an incredibly wonderful job explaining this and answering questions. Every time we have a conversation, we learn something new, or a lot new, I think, today. And so I guess, this is something that we probably need to explore is, are we interested as a group with the number of churches we have? If you just look at, our numbers in the province alone, are we interested in pursuing this further? And of course, we have the support of the Ecology Action Center present today too, which was wonderful. And I'm not just talking about the churches that are present either, because it's important that we offer this, I think, to all faith communities. I'm sure the Ecology Action Center would agree with that one. And so if we work out, so Liam, would a next step be checking out to see how many faith communities there would be potentially, or how many parking lots, I should say, and then come and banter around, the options, like the leasing, the break even, be not whether or not we want to invest in the more expensive option, whether or not, or can. Generally the answer to the can is no. And when it comes to parishes, but then come back to you with what information we've gleaned as a larger group. Is that, or do you have any thoughts on how we might proceed around that? And do we have anybody here who would be opting out from, denominational?
So I can answer your first question, Marion. Obviously, I think the second one's posed to the group, but the first question, we have a survey that we've put together. It is again for the multifamily sector, and it hits a lot of the points that you just asked, that speak to how would you want to pay for it? Would you want to recoup the investments? And then thirdly, of like, what's the level of interest, right? How soon would you expect to be moving forward with that? Like, and for them, it's more so asking, are they planning on purchasing an electric vehicle in the next 6 to 12 months, 1 to 5, 1 to 3, and then 3+ years, or not at all? But we could easily adapt that. Give me a week, to be something that you'd be able to send out to everyone that's on your mailing list and say, hey, is this something that you're interested in? Would you prefer the lease or own model? Would it be a paid or free? Yeah, free for user model. We could adapt that easily within, give me by the end of next week, to have that ready to go for you, but you can send that out.
That would be great. And maybe, Jim.
Yeah, and along those lines, Liam, and thanks, Marianne, I had asked the question if there's a checklist in the EV business where a parish or any individual might look at this. What are some of the criteria that make sense to put an EV charger? You know, like how far is it from the parking lot? How many people show up to church on various days of the week? Or like, what is the likelihood that this makes sense so that a parish or an organization can look at maybe 10 questions and then rate it? Does this make sense? Or even if a archdiocese was going to decide, or a diocese was going to decide, what are the priority buildings besides the ones that want it? What are the ones that are most suitable? And I'm just wondering if that kind of questionnaire exists.
I haven't seen one. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So let me take that away, Jim, and see if there's something that's already made and available easily online that we can send your way. That said, if it's not, it's a great opportunity for us to take it away and develop one, because what we've done in the past, and it's eaten up a lot of time to go visit. It's been close to 30 buildings now to provide that basically free walkthrough to say, okay, does this make sense? But it is 6 questions that we're really there to answer, right? So even if not, it's a great opportunity for us to maybe develop that piece that doesn't already exist and send that along with you as well.
It actually, the Church of England's supposed to send me their list. Liam and I could forward it to you as soon as I get it. Hannah?
It'd be great, Marion. Yeah. And then Tom, I think I saw you had a question in the chat, Thomas, specifically about whether or not Clean and the EV Boost program. So hasn't been confirmed yet that Clean Nova Scotia is going to be continuing forward with what they called the EV Boost program. And so that provided 50% of project funding. There is a federal program, and so Clean was administering this federal funding at the Nova Scotia level. So it's not confirmed whether or not they have that program funded again this year, or if we would be required to apply at the federal level. I'm going with the assumption that you're required to apply at the federal level. It is funding, it's a grant, it's provided when you're actually installing the chargers. Covers up to 50% of the project cost, but would require a minimum of 20 level 2 chargers to be installed. And it would all have to be under the name of one applicant that's kind of leading that application through. So there is going to be some grant funding out there. And I think there's some other grant pools that we could likely tap into, just where it is multi-faith based groups coming together. It's going to check a lot of boxes for some of those electric vehicle and electrifying transportation grants.
Does that sound like it might be feasible to have one organization sort of lead for 20 chargers within this group, or yeah, it might be too early to.
To be honest, if the zero emission vehicle infrastructure program opens as it's supposed to in spring, we'll have more details there as to exactly what the requirements are. Last year, it was about a 22-page application process, or like proposal. And with that, we were required to have all of the project estimates or quote on each project accompanied to it. And so my guess would be if ZVIP is the exact same this year, we're probably going to miss that like first come, first served funding window specifically. But it's likely to be extended again into next year. Last year they had 2 openings, one in the spring, one in the fall. And so, yeah, as everyone on this call knows, funding programs come and go. We try and stay on top of them as best we can. There's also funding through Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, specifically for community buildings, And then the Halifax Climate Investment Impact Innovation Fund has some grants available right now for both Halifax-based organizations, but also organizations outside of Halifax if there would be a benefit that they saw coming back into the city. So yeah, I'm not going to rule out any of those funding streams at the moment, but
Yeah, very
but I
quickly.
think one person could or one organization could handle an application with everyone. Yep.
Sure. Yeah, I would just say that for the next round of that funding, they're supposed to be prioritizing underserved communities, which basically anywhere outside of BC, Ontario, and Quebec, and rural areas as well. So there's a company called Asset Market is currently doing an analysis for Natural Resources Canada. And so hopefully an application like this would kind of meet that criteria and push it up to the top of the list. But yes.
100%. Yeah, I think it would. It's just us getting our ducks in a row to get an application in on time or in a timely manner. Yeah.
So I think that if Hannah could be the last person, is that okay? Unless we have something else urgent, then maybe what we can do is look at how follow up to before we hang up. Okay, Hannah.
I know we're at 4, if not just after. I just had 2 quick things to say is I think Colin shared with me, which I forwarded to the group and I'll forward again because there's some different people on the list now, is a document by Mergly. It's for condos and it's asking all sorts of questions and walking you through, is this the right thing for our space? Where would I put it? So it answers some of those questions that Jim had. I feel it could be really beneficial to create a bespoke document for faith organizations. And I feel like maybe there'd be a draft that we use in the intro phase, and then possibly as a result of the work that we're doing, some kind of a toolkit that we could put together that other provinces or regions could use to do this work as well. And then the one thing that we haven't touched on, Liam, is I'm assuming there's some fees associated with working with Navigate Energy. It may not be the right space to talk about that, but I wanted to make sure that that was acknowledged and that that's part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, so the way that Navigate Energy typically gets paid is either through a project management fee, which we could work with the entire group on, or typically we do a 20% commission of all grants rebates that we help organizations get back. For nonprofit charitable organizations, we bring that down to 10% for rebate commission. So yeah, there's the pitch, whatever makes the most sense, depending on how much money we're pursuing. We can figure that out.
Thank you. That was an important question.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, Hannah, maybe you and I can have a follow-up call. That would really be helpful to me. And Liam, you're going to send out that survey in a week or so. And I'm wondering if people are interested in coming together for more discussion in the next couple of weeks. Just after you've had a chance to process all of this information and think about how it might benefit your faith community.
Perfect. I've dropped my email in the chat as well. If additional questions come up, feel free to email me directly. I'll send over the survey. I think that would be a great next step, Marion, of getting that survey out just to see if there's interest in pursuing that along. But obviously I'm interested for another meeting if it makes sense.
Great, thank you. Okay, anybody else, anything that we need to take care of before we say goodbye? I just want to thank everybody for coming today. I want to thank you for your interest. It's been wonderful getting together with you, and I think that I see all kinds of potential. I'd really like to start moving ahead. You know, well, for me, it's been a couple of years, so now this might be an opportunity for us to really make some, for the rubber to hit the road. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marion, for bringing us all together. And thanks, Liam.
Well, thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to join today.
I'll as much as I can to the email list, if that's okay, folks. And then we can make sure that we've got everybody. Okay, thank you very
I'll
much.
send you my notes, Marion.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Liam. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Liam.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. It's good.